Ganeshaya Namaha, Saraswatyai Namaha, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Hari Om. Offering my humble pranams at the divine lotus feet of Bhagwan Baba, respected elders, dear brothers and sisters, and my dear Balvika's children, Sai Ram. Sai Ram. Sai Ram. Sai Ram. Sai Ram. Sai Ram. Nice, good energy. On behalf of our center and my committee, I'm extremely happy to introduce the Samarpan series in US, and our center being the first to host this Samarpan series, and moving forward with Swami's grace, we hope to host many of this series. But before we get into this, I would like to give a genesis about the Samarpan program itself. The meaning of Samarpan, there are two syllables we can say, Sama, Arpana. Arpana is like offering to Swami. And what are we offering? We always say, Swami, you please be the driver. But we always try to tell Swami how to drive, taxi drivers. So it won't work like that. Sama, thought, word and deed. Once we offer that, I think then Swami's music, it's like we become like a flute and he will be playing the sweet music through us. Just to give a small brief history about this Samarpan, this actually started in the year 2013 in Shivam, Swami's residence in Hyderabad, India. With his immense grace, the program has started, and today across India and other parts of the country, the Samarpan series are in progress, and this is where Swami's grace, Swami's students come and share their experiences. And this is something like, it's an opportunity for us to dock ourselves with this series and charge, like our cell phones throughout the day will be extensively using, and at the tail end of the day it dies. Likewise, this is a series where we can dock ourselves, recharge, relive, and some of these golden experiences that students have with Swami's proximity, I think we could relive some of those things and get motivation from that. That is a kind of energizing that kind of spiritual battery in us. And before I call upon Dr. Veda Viswanathan to introduce the speaker, our chief guest today, I would like to take a moment and also thank Brother Kumar and Brother S. Kumar and Brother Mohan Kumar. The common thing is Kumar, both of them. They have been extremely instrumental in helping, giving me these ideas and lining up the students for carry on this program in the US. Saira, without much time, I would request Veda Viswanathan to come forward and introduce the speaker. Saira.
Jai Sai Ram. I have the unique and pleasant privilege of introducing our speaker of the day, Srikanth Vaidhyanathan. Srikanth was fortunate enough to be born in a family with Swami's influence, and he started the 6th grade at Puttaparthi in Swami school and went on to his undergraduation from Vrindavan campus and masters in physics before moving to United States to do his masters in electrical engineering at University of California, Davis. Currently, he is working as a manager in systems engineering with Raytheon. He was bestowed with speaking, musical, and theatrical abilities by Swami, and he tapped them at the right moment during his student days and later on for the benefit of all of us in the United States. He was made to speak in Sai Kulwant Hall and also was in the bhajan group at Prashanthi Nilayam. He was was in very many convocation dramas, and one of the highlights was that he acted in the drama that we all know and cherish, Cheppinattu Chestara. He has worked in various capacities with Sathya Sai organization. At the central level, he has been associated with the SSC programs and later as the president of the center. And then he moved on to serve in the regional level as SSC coordinator, devotion coordinator, I beg your pardon, devotion coordinator, and later on serves as the Region 1 president for Sathya Sai International Organization. And I call upon Srikanth to relive the moments and share with us all the lessons that he has learned with those experiences. Jai Sai Ram.
If you just pull out and put it back in.
Okay.
Right, offering my most prayerful pranams at Swami's lotus feet. Dear elders and my dear children and I guess peers here in the Bethesda Center. It's such a pleasure to be back here. I've had the opportunity to be part of this center and know very many people from here, I think over the years. It's always a pleasure to be back and connect with everybody. As I was sitting here, I was thinking, I have family in the room, I have people who lived in the Boston area in the room, and obviously people who I used to be in Region 2 as well, so, have known a lot of the people from retreats and things like that, so it's such a pleasure to be back here. I would like to thank Sai Shravan and the officers here for providing me this opportunity to relive the moments. Wanted to say a few things about Samarpan. I think Shravan said it very, very well. I think this was an initiative started more so as a means for us to listen to Swami's stories, particularly at a time when we were missing his physical form quite a bit. So I think it happened in Shivam and subsequently it moved on to other parts of India. So we've had it in, I want to say, in Chennai, and we've had it in Bangalore pretty regularly. I think all these videos are available as well for people to see. And then Mumbai started this, and in fact when you said Shivam, actually today P. Sushila happens to be it's the 75th session, so she's speaking in Hyderabad, or would have spoken on this Sunday. So it is, if you think about it, I think it has always been said that in Kali Yuga, I think we have the different forms of devotion, but listening has always been something which, simple listening of his stories and of his glories can take us a long way. It'll take us all the way to him.
We know the story of Parikshit, who happened to be the grandson of Arjuna. Right? He's the son of Abhimanyu, who was saved in the womb by Lord Krishna. And very, very just king, and was ruling the kingdom pretty well at the end of the Kali age. And as would have it, I think destiny is always plays a role. He happened to go into the forest for hunting, and then happens to be in a very thirsty situation. There's no water available. He happens to chance on the ashram of Rishi Samika. And he goes there, and this sage is in deep meditation. And Parikshit, for somebody who's very, very just, very loving, very caring king, a moment where he was extremely thirsty, I think leads him to make a wrong decision. So he chooses to pick up a dead snake and puts it around he calls on the sage a few times, but there is no response. What would you do? It's pretty much a situation where you say something to somebody and they're not responding to you back. You still are angry with them, so you want to get back at them. So he picks up a dead snake and puts it around the neck of the sage. Sage is not even present in the body, didn't even bother him. Right? So time goes by and he leaves, and Shringi, who happens to be the son of Sage Samika, comes to that area, comes back to the ashram, sees his dad insulted. And without thinking twice, I think immediately he curses, saying, "The person who did this to my father will die 7 days from today." He doesn't even know who it is. So then eventually Rishi Samika comes out of his meditation, and when he hears about all that happened, the first response was, "Why would you do this to such a just king?" Right? So he was more upset with his son for doing something like that rather than take this as a personal insult. And destiny always plays a role. It was decided that the curse was 7 days from today. This snake Takshaka, who happens to be one of the strongest nagas, will kill you. Right? So it's amazing when we think about it. Very often we live in the moment. Parikshit knew he was going to live for 7 days. I think very often nobody has that information. And what did he do with those 7 days? At that point, there is also the story which goes that he was on this tower, and they were, pretty much made sure nothing goes into the king's, inner quarters. So everything was monitored, and Takshaka obviously couldn't make it on top of the thing. And what happens is, at that time, the advice is given to Parikshit: spend the time listening to the stories from Shuka, who happens to be the son of Vedavyasa. And so the next 7 days is spent listening to the stories of Krishna, which forms the Bhagavatam. The reason I mention this is we are so fortunate and so lucky have to know Swami, who not only came as the Sadguru for all of us, but we are so fortunate to have him, who is also the same God who's available to us as the Sadguru. So in this age, listening to these innumerable stories that come with his presence on earth is so beautiful, because in the end, the experiencer really doesn't matter. I think Shravan said it beautifully, actually. I don't know, I didn't share my presentation with him, but that was my first slide. Right? Swami has clearly said, this is from Sathya Sai speaks, "Be like a flute, a hollow reed, straight, light, with no substance to hinder his breath. Then he will come and pick you up from the ground. He will breathe divine music through you." And I think that is mostly our life. I think we go through lots of ups and downs, and like Shravan said, as long as we don't want to drive the car ourselves, we let him drive, life is so much easier. Very often we want to control the outcome, and that's where the difficulty comes into play. In the grand scheme, it is all his play, and as long as we are not a hindrance in the middle, I think life will be smooth, life will be beautiful. And that only comes by, like Swami used to keep saying it over and over and over again, like live in the moment, live in the moment, live in the moment. Some of these discourses we have heard so many times, but Swami keeps repeating it because hoping that the 100th time may be good for one person, 1000th time may be good for another person. Each of us has our own journey, and I think we should enjoy the journey as much as we can. So on that note, I kind of wanted to call out this as well for all of us here. We are all on this path together. There is a road from each heart to the source of all joy, namely God. Each one will come in his own good time, at his own pace, through his own inner urge along the path God will reveal to him as his own. So discover your own path. I think these stories are wonderful, but again, the most important thing is to take the message out of these stories and make it applicable in our own lives. It's very easy to say, oh, you experienced this, it's beautiful, it's lovely, but it doesn't end there. I think, what did I get out of this, right? Everybody, like we always say, in the world, we don't have to make every mistake to know that something will go wrong. We can always learn from others' mistakes. Similarly, we can always learn from others' good things. Also want to call out one more thing here. God has 4 qualities, and this is such a unique thing about the Sai avatar. And it is only when you cultivate them that you can understand him. So God has the qualities, but we should cultivate them so that we can understand him. So it's a very clear message. They are divine love, that's prema, beauty, which is saundarya, sweetness or madhurya, and splendor, which is shobha. The development of prema is enough to add unto you the other 3. Right? So everything is talked in spiritual parlance here. So the spiritual splendor, the spiritual sweetness, and spiritual beauty. All that, once you have that in the spiritual realm, automatically it reflects in our physical realm. When you are so full of love for the divine in all creation, that stage is beauty. When you are immersed in the sea of universal love, you reach the acme of sweetness. When your mind loses its identity and merges in the universal mind, then there is splendor indescribable. And if you look at all these messages, this is from 1966. Right? Swami has been giving discourses forever and ever and ever. 50 plus years was spent in this Sandesha. Swami used to always say, right? Early life was Leelas and Mahimas. Swami pulled out different things from the tree and showed his classmates wonderful experiences and things like that. But the core of his life was spent in Upadesha or Sandesha, right? So that is where it's pretty much the rubber meeting the road, and I think that is why truly he came. When I think of centers, I always look forward to the study circles, because that is the time you really listen to what he has come to give. So I was telling Shravan yesterday, because bhajans are beautiful, that's what draws us to the center. We utilize that to enjoy the beautiful praises of the Lord, but at some level I still feel it is us singing to him. But the study circle is when the discourses come from him to us. And I think that's why it becomes so critical that we spend the time, reading his literature, spend the time, at our own personal level to understand what he has come to give us. With that, sorry, went too fast. So this is a topic very dear to me, because living with God is true education, living for God is true service, and living in God is true realization. So this is even at a very, very physical level, as many of you would have heard, students and I think plenty of peers here who spent a lot of time in Swami's presence. And it is a beautiful university, right? Because anything we did there, I think the focus was on Swami. As I'll share stories as you go along, you see that every day our life was spent with, morning you get up, there is prayer. Then you do your yoga, there is sort of prayer before that. You do your breakfast, there is Brahmarpanam before that. Go to school, go to college, there is the prayer before you start the school. Come back, have lunch, there is Brahmarpanam. Just if you look at how Swami has orchestrated the whole thing, before every session he's automatically inserted something which will make us think of him. Right? And that was the whole point of us being there as students. Don't get me wrong, we got all our physical education, all the worldly secular education which we need. But at the same time, I think the whole purpose of being there is to imbibe in a spiritual environment. And the whole schedule, when we go there, it feels sometimes very strict, feels sometimes very rigid. I went through that journey myself, being away from parents in a residential environment. But it all makes sense today when I am a parent myself, and when I look at my own children growing up here, it becomes more and more clear why certain guidelines, why certain boundaries existed with the best of intentions, that we become a wholesome individual at the end of it. So let me start with, just to finish off the whole Sadguru piece of it. I think God Himself being available to us as a Guru on a day-to-day basis, it's immense gratitude to Him for that. Very often they say the word Guru stands for Gunatita and Ru stands for Rupa Varjita. And Swami used to keep saying this over and over again. Translates as one who is beyond gunas, one who is beyond the qualities which embody a person, and one who is without form. And truly Swami, the form which we loved so much, at some point he even took that away from us. Because in the end, I think the point is, we have to go inside. How much ever we search for Him, I used to always think, anytime you think of a problem, you have an issue, you run to Puttaparthi, right? That was the mechanism we knew. All of us could go there, sit, and no matter, who we are, we have His audience, right? We get to see Him, and a mere look, He doesn't have to speak to us, can solve life's million problems. But at the same time, He even took away that form from us, because at some point, these external attachments will surely end. We can run from one place to next place to next place. But eventually, I think we have to go inside. So it forces us, no matter where we are, to look at Him inside us. So now I'll go to some stories. Growing up in Sai fold, I think actually Vidya and I, we share a set of great-grandparents, my grandmother and her grandfather, her brother and sister. So they came into the Sai fold actually in the early 60s. So like a typical traditional, we grew up in, my parents and grandparents are all in Chennai. So a very traditional family, very spiritual, very devoted, which is, I'm sure, very true in most of our family's case. And always in the search of something which will take us, closer to God. So this was a time, I think they were they used to go to different gurus and, obviously respected everybody. It happened that on one of their trips, I think my father and Vidya's grandfather, I think they decided that they will go and see Sai Baba because he was visiting Chennai. And he was visiting this particular hall, and I think they decided to drive there. So they went there, and it was providence that it was the end of the session, and Pavana Purusha Saisha was the Arati song at that time. For those of you who have been in the Sai fold for a long time, Om Jai Jagadisha Hare came much later. So similarly, some of these Ashtotram, Suprabhatam, all these we hear, it is contributions of Dupati Tirumalacharya. He's somebody who wrote many of these things, and it became available to us, which we use today. But so they saw him, saw his form, and subsequently, interest. They start picking up books and started reading books. And there was a group which met for bhajans on a weekly basis. So they used to go to this house. And Swami at that time used to drive his own car. You must have heard stories. In fact, Swami used to, when he used to come to the hostel, students always used to ask Swami to share his story, right? Who better to get it from himself? He's experienced his life. So very often, including stories of his childhood and, not having anything beyond 2 pairs of clothes or even 1 pair of clothes. Swami used to say pretty much, I used to wear that, never wanting to show that my parents didn't have enough. He was always careful to reflect the family in a very, very proper way. Swami used to say he used to wear these clothes, at the end of the day, come back, wash it, keep it, get it ready for the next day. And in one point I remember he said, the button in his shirt had broken and he couldn't even ask them for money for button to stitch on his shirt. And he said, I used to use thorns off of, bushes, which I used to use to keep my shirt together. We all know the story of Swami going on this scouting camp to Kamalapuram, right? So this is part of Satyam Shivam Sundaram. For those of you who have not read, this is a chance. Read Satyam Shivam Sundaram. So Swami talks about his own. Professor Kasturi has written the book with Swami's stories, and he didn't have money to go on this scouting trip, and Swami decides to take a walk, right? A lot of distance without telling anybody that his family cannot afford it. So there are such beautiful experiences. So when he says his life is his message, it's not some divine form coming and saying, this is what I can do, this is what I can do. He lived and showed most of these things, right? Even at the simplest level, we as students had the opportunity to visit his inner quarters. It's very, very simple place. There's no fancy air conditioner. Swami lived with just a fan for many, many years. And his room used to be so small. And at one point I had a question in my mind, and Swami was like, I'll show you my room. So I went up to his room, and it was Swami and me, and then he said, this is Swami's room. There is a table and a chair. That's the table and chair which Swami sat and wrote how many Vahinis, right? And Swami used to write the initial introduction to Sanatana Sarthi, which we get even today. Many of his writings were during that time span, 60 to 80s, when he wrote a lot of these books himself. And very simple life, right? And that's how Swami was always. Anyway, coming back to this, so they used to attend regularly these bhajan sessions in the community, and it used to be time when different miracles used to happen, and those are always his visiting cards. And it's nice because it's always nice to see something out of the ordinary, because it catches our mind. But the moment we stop and make him just a magician, then we have lost the purpose of why we are here. Very often, we are like, Swami, give me vibhuti, and then, it becomes whether it came from his hand or it came from the bag, or, we are so lost in that kind of assimilation of his glory. So things used to come out of the picture. There used to be, letters used to come. I think apart from honey and, vibhuti and all these different things, there used to be letters. So people used to sit for bhajans. At the end of the bhajans, there used to be a set of letters addressed to specific individuals at the altar. Such a beautiful time, and actually we still have a letter at home. And my grandmother, one day she had this thing in my mind. So, Swami is writing to each of us different messages, but in this particular house, they used to store all those letters in the altar itself. So people used to not take it away with them. So one day she had this desire saying, can I at least take one letter back home? That way it will become part of my altar at home. And that day there in the letter it said, take it with you in Tamil. So, and we have this letter even today, So it was a time when Swami used to interact no matter where we are. And I sincerely believe it is even true today. He does not have to be physically available to interact with us. Wherever we are, on the plane, on the road, in the car, if we think of him sincerely with a lot of faith, he will always be available to us. One day she was sick, and she was like, should I go to center or not? And that day it was like, Swami's always said, if you are, don't stand on flimsy excuses, I'm not feeling well, I'm this or that. He says, in fact, at one point his message is very direct. If you are sick, still go to center. It's better dying singing bhajans rather than sitting at home and brooding over something else. It's very direct. So one particular day, so she had a headache, she goes there, and Amritanjan came out of the photograph. So things like this used to happen, and that's Swami's way of interacting, and he's physically available to millions of people at the same time. That was his interaction. Subsequently, I think my first seeing Swami was when I was a few months old. My parents tell me that they used to live in Delhi at the time. At the Kamani Auditorium in Delhi, Swami was visiting. He used to visit different cities pretty regularly. I had the opportunity to see him physically, and of course only realized later. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, many of you may know, used to be the Prime Minister of India, and he was one of the chief guests in those early times, right? This was in the 70s. So Swami became sort of the central piece in our family altar, right? We used to have all the other pictures, but Swami was the centerpiece of the whole thing. And regularly we started going to different things. Eventually my grandmother actually picked up and started Bal Vikas classes at home. And you have no choice, particularly kids whose parents are officers. That is life, right? You get into the Sai fold, only later realizing why we do it. right? So got into the Sai fold, and I was part of dramas starting on very, very early actually. So I'll start with I'll share a few pictures here. So this is in Abbotsbury, Chennai, many, many years ago, 81. So yeah, the small boy there you see as Krishna is me. Right, yeah, I think I was about 5 years old. And Swami used to come to Chennai pretty regularly actually. Abbotsbury was, for those of you from Chennai know, so beautiful to see Swami there. It filled with trees. Swami used to walk around and give darshan. So beautiful. And that's another beautiful thing about the Sai avatar, right? Very often I think when we go to other gurus, we are the ones going to the guru. Here, Swami is the one who's walking amongst us. We are comfortably sitting where we are, right? It's so beautiful. And anyway, so Swami comes, and right after the play, Swami was becoming more and more real for me, right? He was always this God, he was this person, but slowly there was a physical interaction. I think I have a close-up picture there. So yeah, Swami was also very, very young in age at that time. He was just past his 60. He was not yet 60. So anyway, so that was my first introduction and coming to the Sai thing. Then the following year, I think I was in another play. So you see me there on the Swami's left. I think I have the garland in hand. Swami used to accept garlands at that time, and right after the play, he took the garland and then gave me the garland right after. So Swami was becoming more and more personal, right? So this was something I was beginning to notice, that the Swami is not just this presence in the puja room, he's also a personal God. Relationship was slowly building, and then eventually I ended up going to 1983. There was this big event in Prashanthi Nilayam. We had a cosmos production, that is essentially all the planets going around the sun. There was a demonstration of that in front of Swami. There was a rally by all the Bal Vikas children in India. That was 1983. That was my first trip to Puttaparthi. And when I went to Puttaparthi, I remember that, it used to not be that often. Now it's extremely convenient from Chennai. It used to be once in a while we used to go to Puttaparthi. And that particular trip I particularly remember because primary school had just been built. It was 1981 when the primary school came into play. And one day I think I was walking by, I asked my mother that I want to go on the elephant slide. For those of you who are students, you'll know there is this elephant slide where you can go through the stomach and slide down the elephant. And my mother said, you can't go in there unless you're a Sai student. And I think that is my singular reason why I went and became a Sai student. So, yeah, in fact, I was thinking about this the other day. My parents never asked me to apply, and I had already gotten my transfer certificate, which is essentially the school leaving certificate, even before I had gotten admitted to Prashanthi Nilayam, a few years later. Anyway, so slowly, Swami was becoming the central figure in everything that we did. And eventually I got an opportunity to give a welcome speech. This is in Sundaram many years ago. I think Radio Sai recently made some pictures out of this actually. I'll show you some quick pictures of that, and I have a picture of that. Yeah, that was a very beautiful moment. I don't know what the joke was, but but clearly remember that conversation. So I think what ended up happening was I was supposed to give the welcome speech, and so Swami's chair was in the middle of the room, and they told me once Swami sits on his chair, you can get up and start your speech. I was, I think, 9 years old or something, 9 or 10 years old. And I was very well prepared, but also very, very scared. This was in Sundaram and it was filled, right? There were so many people. It might be a connector issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So what had happened was they had told me as soon as Swami sits in the chair, you can get up and start giving the speech, right? So the hall is filled. I know Dr. Kumar used to sing in Sundaram at that time. This is 85. I stood up, I started speaking, I was in the corner, Swami was sitting in the middle, but Swami has his ways of connecting, right? So as soon as I started, he got up from the chair and came and stood in front of me. And that's where you see the previous images, so you can see how intently he kept staring at me. And I actively, if you look at me, I am looking elsewhere, so I'm not looking at him. So I was very, very scared that I will stop the speech at some point, but Swami kept going, and then I finished my talk. He was very happy, so he said, how many days practice? So I said, Swami, 9 days practice. He said, no, not 9 days. You started on this day and it was 11 days. And Swami, obviously, what he says is the truth. It's not, you don't question whether it's truth or not. His word is truth, right? So immediately he said, 11 days practice, and I said, okay, Swami. And then immediately he said something to me in Telugu right away. And at that time I understood zero Telugu. Obviously my mother tongue is Tamil, so I didn't know anything in Telugu. And Swami said something to me in Telugu and then sort of walked away. And many years later, this was almost 13, 14 years later, was sitting in the mandir, and Swami had called a couple of groups of devotees inside the interview room. Just as he was about to close the door, he called me inside. So I went inside, and I was sitting at the back. I was sitting against the door, and there was just these two groups of devotees. Swami was speaking to them for a while. And after that, suddenly he said, he's my student, and Swami puts lots of accolades on you. So, he's the gold medalist, he's this, he's that. And very often, I always think, sometimes I wonder whether is this true, is this not true? But then I always think he's also a divine parent. I think when he says certain things, always it comes true. I think, so we never question his time. His time is at a very, very different level. Anyway, so Swami said many things, and at the end of it he said, I asked him to come and join my school. That's why he joined my school. This was something I clearly remember never happened, right? So this was, in my mind, that was something which didn't happen. So I immediately looked at Swami, and he knew right away that there was a question in my mind. He said, remember that day you spoke in Sundaram? This is 13 years later. And he said, after you spoke, I said this to you in Telugu, he said. So think of the context of this talk, right? So this is a conversation between two individuals. One person doesn't even remember that, and Swami here remembers that conversation and tells you 13 years later. And he's not just Swami for me. He takes care of the whole world, whether they come to him or not. The point I'm trying to make is Swami is such a personal God. And I think it behooves us to use those opportunities to realize who he is. Very often we get into this rut of asking the same questions over and over again. Is the vibhuti hidden? Is something coming from there? Is Swami truly God? All these questions we have all the time. But he is this personal God who we should not let go when we have the opportunity, because it doesn't matter to him, it matters to us. So it's so important that we pick up on these opportunities. He comes in a dream, he tells us something, right? He comes through somebody who we may not even be like, this is a person I don't like. But Swami comes through that person to give us some particular message. It really is for us to be really tuned to him so that we can realize that message is coming to us. Anyway, so that was that. And so I went to Puttaparthi. So that was, I applied. That's what I thought. I wrote an entrance exam, and it was most of the students who came that batch were from Ooty. There was 2-3 of us who got admitted into primary school from outside. And Bharatnatyam was always my first love, and my father never allowed me to learn Bharatnatyam. He said it's meant for girls. So, he's like, as a boy, you will not have an opportunity to learn Bharatnatyam. I think many of you know Suresh. He used to be here in this center. And you know that Suresh and Satish danced before Swami Bharatnatyam. So it's good for boys too. That's always my point. And actually Swami materialized chains and gave both of them on a trip from Michigan. But anyway, so Bharatnatyam was my first love, and as Swami figures out ways to make that happen. That was me in the primary school. This is in the dining hall for those of you who've been in primary school. So this is dancing to the famous song Baje Muraliya Baje, which is sung by Pandit Bhimsen Joshi and Lata Mangeshkar. So that song was, I never learned anything formally, but I just got trained for this particular dance. And when you have a desire, I feel Swami figures out a way to bless that as well. So anyway, so that is step by step, Swami was becoming this, and he used to always figure out a way to communicate, come by, talk, and he used to make sure you're comfortable. Like I said, I wanted to join Swami school. My parents never asked or even mentioned it to me. So I joined Swami school, and then you learn that you're away from your family, figure out a lot of things on your own, and it's truly an incredible atmosphere. I think there are teachers there who've spent their entire lifetime, and they're only there because of Swami, right? We think of Sai Center. Why do we come to Sai Center? Each of us are there not for each other. We are here only because of Swami, right? Everybody comes to Puttaparthi school. Why do we come? We come because Swami is there. So that is the reason I make that point. Is it's important to keep that always in the back of your mind, because very often we forget why we come, and we get entangled in relationships, and we get entangled in personal situations, which is, those are all outcomes of being here together. Our whole goal is to be together, get closer to Him. I think that's the purpose of a Sai Center. Living with a Divine Master. So I just want to share a few different anecdotes here. So, Swami is truly this Divine Master, and when He satisfies your simple physical desires, you begin to think He's like a mother, He's like a father. But once in a while, He will suddenly show you things which are of a very divine nature, and that is how, I guess, Maya works. So it is important for us to catch that moment. So I'll narrate a few different stories. So one time, two students were having an argument about the dollar to rupee conversion. So they were sitting in the D floor, as they call it, or the the topmost level in the hostel. They were sitting and discussing, two people interested in economics, I guess, or finance. They were discussing the dollar to rupee conversion. So one person said it's 10.68, other person said it's 10.75. They both, kept arguing for a while. Suddenly the hostel bell rang to go for darshan. So the conversation was left in the middle. They both, went for darshan. It happened that one of these boys had the opportunity to sit right in the front for darshan. So that day, Swami comes out. He walks by, and as he's walking by this boy, he just drops a 10.71 and just goes off. Right? So a conversation between two individuals, nobody even knows. And here, people are wondering why Swami would say 10.71 to somebody who's sitting there and then walk away. The point is, he is the observer in every conversation. He is not one who will, sit and say, I know everything. He is one who will give you these glimpses, whereas we know so little, and we make a big deal out of what we know, right? We quote Bhagavad Gita, we quote this, we quote that, we become, little we know, and like Swami always says, you guys know this much, you show off as if you know that much. But I know so much, but then I act as if I don't know anything. And I think that is where for us it's important to be like the Master. Be simple, be straightforward, just be yourself, I think. Another time, obviously, you might have heard this story, but I think it's a beautiful narration of where a group of Australian devotees have an interview with Swami, and there happens to be an emergency situation back in Australia, and right out of the interview room, Swami sends a person, there is the description of, Swami draws the map on the wall, and, shows Australia, then, Sydney, and then this particular person's neighborhood and his house. The gate opens for the house, and Swami sends him away. So 6 people went in for the interview, 5 people came out. Right? So Swami can do immense great things, but when he shows that, take advantage of that. That's my point. Another story which Dr. Ravi Kumar, I think you might have had him here last year. So in fact, he mentioned this story to us at one point. We have this great story of Jnana Sambandar. I think for those of you who know the story of the 63 Nayanmars, right? In the Tamil literature, there is this story that Jnana Sambandar, goes with his father to, when his father goes to the river to take a shower, and he's such a young kid, and he's sitting there on the steps. His father goes into the water to shower, but doesn't come back up. And this child is like 3-4 years old, sitting there crying, and there is a story that Shiva and Parvati, decide that he should be blessed, and Shiva tells Parvati that you should go and feed the child. So there is like the story that she brings a cup of milk and gives it to the child, and he used to be Sambandar, he becomes Jnana Sambandar, right? Because he drank the milk given by Goddess Parvati. So he becomes this person with a lot of illumination and knowledge, and he becomes this great saint at a very, very young age. And Dr. Ravi Kumar happened to be reading the story of the Periya Puranam. I think that's where the story is mentioned. And as he was reading this, one particular day, I think he was midway and he closed the book because Swami had come out for darshan. He was sitting in the bhajan hall. As Swami came near him, he had read till the part where the boy is sitting at the steps and the father goes in to take a dip. And Swami at that point had come to him and said, "How many cups of milk do I have to give you?" Right? That's the comment he made. And Dr. Ravi Kumar had not yet read the next part, and then once Swami went in, when he read that, he was like, this is the same Shiva Shakti who knows every thought of ours, right? And Swami makes it a point to let us know, it is for us to be tuned to him to really catch it. Otherwise we'll miss it. We'll live our lives very, very regularly. If we live every moment thinking about him, I think he'll figure out a way to connect back with us. There is also the story of Swami Purushottamananda, right? This is again captured in Satyam Shivam Sundaram, where he was praying in the Rishikesh area, it's the Vasishta Guha in close to Rishikesh. I think that's where Swami appears to him, and then he appears to him as his own personal God. And when he comes out, he's this normal Swami, taking everybody around and things like that. There's also the story of there was this great devotee. She had very great devotee of Swami, and what had happened was she had lost her husband very, very early. So a boy and a girl, very, very young, she raises them very carefully without even having a proper job. She was not much educated, and then the only person she thinks of for anything and everything is Swami. So it happens that her son has a desire to go to Tirupati. So once he's grown up and he had just graduated, gotten a job, as Thanksgiving he goes to Tirupati. And then as soon as he goes to Tirupati, before you go into the temple, you go to the Pushkarini tank. So he goes to the Pushkarini tank to take a shower. He takes a bath and he passes away right away. So there is this mother who is in so much sorrow. She had lost her husband very early. The family was already struggling. Somehow she got through her kids through education, and then he passes away. So she goes to Swami, anything and everything, only person we can fight with is him. Right? So she goes to Swami and then cries out saying, who else do I have? At this point, he was the one who was going to take care of the family, get my daughter married, put us in a little bit better position financially. And then Swami immediately tells her not to cry, and then, shows his own hand. And in his hand, he shows the last few moments of that particular boy going into the Pushkarini tank and dipping and passing away. So then Swami says, he used to be this great yogi who had to take this birth only to live a certain period to get through a certain amount of karma before he can come back to me permanently. So Swami assures her that he is with me. The reason I mentioned all this set of stories is Swami is verily this divine being who is walking or walked physically amidst us. Asking you is there food in this, is there salt in the sambar, or is there idli, and these are things which we relate to, right? But at the same time, he's this grand master pulling a lot of different strings in a lot of different directions. So it's up to us that really we yearn for what he has come to give. And stop asking for, when I mean by that is we can still talk to him as a friend for sure. But let's ask for the best of things in life. Not just, the secular things which we ask for. Swami, I want a better job, I want this, I want that. It's okay to have that conversation, but at the same time, it's important to ask for the highest knowledge which he has come to give us. The reason I wanted to bring Swami's quotes is it's not important who the person is who's the experiencer. I think at every stage, Swami has always given us these different life messages that everyone can make these things very, very applicable to each of us. Life is like a flight of steps towards the Godhead. You have your foot on the first step when you are born. Each day is a step that must be climbed, so be steady, watchful, and be earnest. Every step is a victory to be cherished. Every day wasted is a defeat to be ashamed of. So this again, all these are from Sathya Sai Speaks, and this is actually all these slides, just want to say is, were part of an exhibition which we had taken as a group from Region 1 to Swami, and Swami came patiently, walked through the entire exhibition. In the end, we figure out opportunities, his own words, which we put in slides, which we put in things, show it to him. In the end, the point is to spend time with him. Right? And Swami was immensely happy to, see these different things, and he was like, make these as practices in your life. That's the whole point. Very often we put together plays, we do different things. I think enjoying the process is as much as important as enjoying the goal itself. Anyway, coming back to life in Prashanthi Nilayam, like I said, it was a time when, Swami, particularly as students, there are a lot of SSC students here. I think he expected us to do very well in all forms of life. You needed to be a good student, you needed to be a good sportsman, you needed to be good in Veda chanting, you need to be good in bhajans, you need to be... Expectations are, Swami had this, that a student should be a well-rounded personality, because that will serve them well when they are back in the society. So, Swami had obviously seen me speak a couple of times, but then what had happened was, in 8th grade, I recollect, Swami used to pick me and say, he used to give me a few days time before I used to prepare for these talks. And these used to be talks before, Janmashtami discourse, or Ganesh Chaturthi, Guru Purnima. I think before Swami speaks, you invariably see a couple of people speak, either students or, senior people in the organization. Swami makes them speak. So it just sets the tone, and then eventually everybody's there to listen to Swami speak. But very often we think we are very important, that's why we're giving the talk. So, Swami used to prepare these talks immensely, is to sit with him, prepare these talks. So one time for Guru Purnima, he had given me like 10 days notice. So I had a good talk prepared. So, you can come, give a speech. But at the same time, Swami was, you need to remember you're representing the university, you're representing his students. It's important to do a good job. It's Sai Kulwant Hall or Purnachandra Hall or, any of these big places. So it's important to do it well as well. And so for Guru Purnima, Swami had given me like 10 days time, and then subsequently next was Ganesh Chaturthi, and these were all back-to-back functions happening, July, August, September, and then for Ganesh Chaturthi, Swami had given me like 3-4 days notice, so again I was prepared. Then Janmashtami, I remember Professor Chakravarti, who is the Chancellor of the Institute, he actually told me on Janmashtami day morning, Swami wants you to speak in the evening, so it was at least a few hours. Slowly, the point I'm trying to make is, Swami wants us to be ready all the time. I think initially he'll give us notice, you can get prepared. But, when that opportunity comes, if Swami just tells me, get up, speak, and I say, Swami, I can't speak, that opportunity is gone forever. Right? Get up and sing a bhajan. I think these opportunities in the presence of the Lord come only once. And when it comes, pick up your opportunity and, make him happy. I think that's the point I'm trying to make. So one particular time, this was during Dashara, Swami had picked 10 of us or 15 of us to speak, and each of us had to speak, before his discourse. Swami does this Veda Purusha Jnana Saptaha Yajna, and from the 3rd day onwards, Swami gives discourses on different facets of Devi, and the Yajna goes on throughout the day in Purnachandra Hall. And Swami had picked about 15 of us, and we were preparing these talks over many days, and particularly in my case, I used to sing while I speak as well. So Swami had told me that it's good you pick a few songs as you speak. He said those who are sleeping will wake up as well. So it's a good way to break it up. But the good thing with that is, I think I was one of 2 people who used to do this. Swami used to sit and prepare the entire talk with us. So this again, Swami, nobody would even know that he would spend so much time on a talk which is 10 minutes long. Pretty insignificant, because most people are waiting to listen to Swami. But the amount of time he would spend in any of these things is pretty immense. That's why I always think of him, amongst all his divine qualities is this pursuit of perfection. And that is something we can try to emulate, right? Because very often we can say, Swami, you are an avatar, you do all these things. I don't think I'll be able to do those things. That's not the point. I think he lived and showed many of these things. And 2 of those qualities are pursuit of perfection and also instant detachment. I think for Swami, the thing is, when an event needs to be done, he will do all the planning, all the requirements, putting together all the arrangements. But at the same time, once the event is done, he's the last person who will sit and say, look at my hospital, look at my institute, how well it's serving everybody. The point is, his detachment is also instant. So divine qualities is not having this Shankha, Chakra and all these things. It is about demonstrating these values on a day-to-day basis. And these are things we can surely pursue as well. So this particular time, so Swami had sat with me. I was to sit one-to-one with him, pick all the songs that I wanted to sing. And then I used to say what I know, and then Swami said, not this song, pick this song. It was just a way to spend time with him. So this speech was all set, and I didn't have a song to start the talk with. So Swami had told me, you think about it, I'll think about it, and then we'll pick up something. This is also Swami, right? So I said all this Pushkarani and all these things. At the same time, he'll say, you think about it, I'll think about it, right? You think he doesn't know what he's talking about. Anyway, next day bhajans were going on, and then suddenly somebody pats me on the back. I'm sitting in the bhajan hall and Swami's there, and he says, this particular bhajan, so it's not typical. He would have asked me to sing a Tyagaraja Kriti or something else. But in this particular case, he told me this bhajan is beautiful. Start your talk with this particular bhajan. This is the famous T.V. Hariharan composition. Mukti Pradayini, Prema Pradayini, Shanti Pradayini Ma Janani, which is a very famous song. So I was ready with my talk, and on the third day, I was supposed to speak on the 31st day. And Swami comes to me the previous day and says, no, you speak on the 9th day, there will be a lot of crowd. Right? So we think again, our talk is very important. We need to be at the prime spot, right? So when I'm singing a bhajan, I need to be in the correct place so that I get the maximum attention. So 9th day, is fast approaching. On the 8th day, I develop a very, very high fever. And then what happens is Swami comes up to me and, I go up to Swami and say, I don't think I'll be able to speak tomorrow, Swami. Swami said, don't worry, I will send the doctor to the hostel. So even then, he didn't say you don't have to speak. So Dr. C.G. Patel, many of you may know, he orchestrated Swami's trip to East Africa. So he came to the hostel, gave me some medication and all that. And next day, I was feeling better, but not completely okay. And so Swami calls up the warden and checks how I'm doing, and then the warden tells Swami, and Swami said, tell him I'll send a car, and driver, and so, this speech is so important. So I sit in the car, go all the way to Mandir, and once I get there, Swami is at the door. Swami used to live in the main Mandir, the Sai Gulwant area at that time. So, but then the events used to happen in Purnachandra Hall. So Swami was already in the Purnachandra Hall. And then he basically opened the door. I went inside. Swami said, sit down. He went and got water himself for me to drink. I drank water and everything. And he said, you speak first. Typically, when you have two speakers, the younger speaker, Swami asked them to go first. You speak first, and as soon as you're done, you go back and take rest. My discourse is very long, he told me. So again, it all looks like the speech was so important that I had to deliver it that day. And I get up, I speak. This was, I was fine. I got through the whole thing. Swami, right on the stage, gave me water to drink and told the next person who was speaking right after me, he said, tell everybody, he was very, very sick. Swami wanted him to speak, so he came and spoke. The reason I narrate all these details is, Swami is always that way, right? And that is again a quality we can always emulate. He did all the work himself. I didn't do much. He helped me prepare the talk. He sent the doctor, he sent the card. Once I got there, he said, take rest, gave water, this and that. I gave the talk. But at the end of the talk, again, he tells everybody, he gave the talk because I wanted him to give the talk. The point I'm trying to make is, Swami does all the hard work, and that is true for us in life as well. He does most of the work, as long as we are not a hindrance in the middle and, trying to drive the car from the back seat. I think we'll be okay. I think it's important to trust his hand is there in everything. I think the Cheppinattu Chestara play was mentioned, so I'll just quickly talk about it. I know the center here also did the Cheppinattu Chestara a few years ago. In Boston, we did it last year. It's this iconic play, and it is written by Swami. It is in Satyam Shivam Sundaram, Volume 1. Right? Cheppinattu Chestara is a Telugu word. It's can you practice all that you preach? That's what the words mean. And the way the story is written is, the Swami wrote this when he was a very, very young boy. Like he was 10, 12 years old. And he used to do these plays with his group of friends. And the play's theme is essentially very, very relevant to us, particularly for me when I look at it as a parent today, it's so relevant, right? So the story revolves around this boy Krishna, who has a mother, father and a teacher, and his mother gives lots of advice about, doing dana and dharma, that is doing a lot of charity work and all that kind of stuff. And what happens is she discusses all these things with her friends. They have this ladies group where they discuss the Bhagavad Gita and this and that, and it is said that you should give charity to people who really deserve and who really need. And then there is this very rich Brahmin who comes, who gives us all sorts of blessings, and she gives him a lot of gifts, right? And then a poor blind person comes to the door, and she just sends him away, saying that, don't come near me type of thing. So the boy sees the mother is discussing all the good things, and immediately she is not implementing any of those things. So when I look at myself, I say many things, but then when it comes to action, I don't show it to my children. So it becomes very critical. It's a play written 50 years ago, or 60, 70 years ago. Still relevant today in society as we are. In fact, the play we did in Boston, we sort of relayed in all the local channels for people to see with the English subtitles as well. It was done in English, but still just to get the essence out of it. Then second act is the father again, advising all these things, you should be good to people and all these things, but then he gives a lot of money to a party and then does not give money to somebody who wants to go to school for education purposes. And finally the act where there's a teacher who's supposed to have done 36 chapters before the inspector of schools arrives, but he has only completed 22 and directly does the 36th, which is on truth. And he says, tell the inspector of schools that we have completed 36 chapters, even though he has done only, and we are teaching truth, but asking them to lie. So, Dr. S. Kumar played the role of my mother in that play, I think many of you know, and Sundar Iyer, who many of you may know as well, I think he was the teacher in that play, and actually he's the main writer of the script as well. Sundar was very, very active in writing scripts for plays and things like that, and orchestrating, directing these plays. And so basically this play was just an excuse, and Swami, had asked me to play the role of Krishna in that particular play. But the best thing about these plays, I think I was telling a couple of people earlier, is whenever you hear students, they always talk about these plays and bhajans and this and that, right? These are all only opportunities to, the process is so important. It's not the play itself. Even when we do SSC plays, we enjoy the process of being together. I think now we are practicing for the regional retreat which is coming up, right? So we enjoy the process, we get to know each other, we learn a lot. I think that is more critical than the final performance itself. And particularly in this case, the interaction is with Swami. So all the time we are, spending time with him morning, evening. He will not only talk about the play, but he will also talk about different life lessons. Right? He will pick up a spiritual topic, we'll get to ask him something, we'll sing a few songs, he will teach us a few songs. It's just time to sit with him. It's like truly how, I'm guessing how Vrindavan would have been, where the gopis and, everybody just spends time with the Lord. That is sufficient to get you to salvation. Right? Just spending the time with the Lord. Anyway, so I think I have a couple of pictures here. I think that's that. I was in my 8th grade. On the right is, you see Sundar, I think. Sundar is the teacher. So this is obviously very, very skilled musicians like Dr. S. Kumar and others. And most of these convocation plays are filled with lots of songs. So we have lots of different things going on, and I think it's a picture from the end. I think Swami was concluded with the Tvameva Matacha Pita Tvameva. So and then Swami materialized a chain and everything. Anyway, so again, it's like at the end he did the whole work, and then he appreciates you. And then for 4 days he used to ask me to show the chain to a lot of people. This is like he can do whatever he wants. And actually that year, for some of you may remember, Brahmananda Reddy, he was the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh at that time. So he was the chief guest. And in fact, Swami asked me to go and see him at the back and show the chain to him as well. So anyway, so that was that. So I wanted to just show a couple of, this again, a sports meet discussion. This was, Veda is an important aspect of our time there. We learned a lot of Veda chanting. This particular time, actually, I gave a talk on, I think some of you may know, Bhadram Karne Vishnuyama Devaha, which is the Shanti mantra which comes before Ganapati Adavasirsham. So, actually, Vaidyanathan sir, many of you know, he helped me write a talk explaining breaking out each word in Bhadram Karne Vishnuyama Deva, what the whole essence of the whole, Shanti mantra is. I think he gave a talk on that at the sports meet. And of course, Swami is always gracious. He'll figure out a way to. He's always the most beautiful in the picture because he's always smiling at the camera, right? And typically I'm like scared. Anyway. I'm going to bring this next chord. The stamp of bhakti or devotion is what makes the prayer reach the destination or reach God. Not the festoons, not the fanfare, the heap of flowers or the festive nature of the feast offerings. The simple, sincere heart is the stamp that makes the prayer travel fast. I thought this was a very beautiful pictorial representation of that. You just need the love, and I think the address is pretty straightforward. Right? So, I wanted to bring the story of Markandeya in this context, actually. Markandeya is one of the 18 Puranas, right? We always talk of, in Sanskrit it's said, Ashtadasha Puraneshu Vyasasya Vachanadvayam Paropakaraya Punyaya Papaya Parapidanam, right? Paropakaraya Punyaya, that is, our life should be spent in the service of others, right? That is the essence of the whole, I think Swami's point is, 18 Puranas can be condensed into those two things. Papaya Parapidanam, which is run away from sin. I think that is essentially the two things. Love for God and, like Swami always says, Deva Priti, Papa Bhiti and Sanganiti, right? It's very simple. All his teachings, he brings the essence of entire scriptures. Deva Priti, love for God. Papa Bhiti, right? The fear of sin. And Sanganiti, which is morality in society. And we are so fortunate to have this personal God and avatar who spent so many years with us, giving us simple life lessons. We don't have to know the grammatical details of Sanskrit and this and that, right? Very often people want to learn the most complicated things, and in the end it really doesn't matter because the message is very, very simple. A word, Sai Ram, is sufficient, right? We don't have to know I didn't learn Sanskrit when I was young, Veda chanting is not coming to my mouth, we worry about so many things. I think in the end all those things don't even matter. So Markandeya was, okay, so there is this sage, Mrikandu and Marudwati, that is his wife. This is part of the Markandeya Purana. And he was one of the devotees of Lord Shiva. And so the husband and wife don't have kids for a long time. And eventually what happens is they pray to God, saying we need an heir. And so Shiva comes to the sage and says, I can give you a choice. You can have a good son who will live for a short period of time. Or you can have a bad son who can live for a long period of time. Being very, very virtuous parents, obviously they chose the good son, because in the end a good son is somebody who does well for the world. And so Markandeya is born, and subsequently Markandeya is about 15, 16, and his time on earth is coming to an end, and then the parents tell him that you only have one more year to live. And at that time, they cannot do anything. Your only refuge is Lord Shiva. And he prays to Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva is supposed to have pulled him back from God of Death, Yama. So that is the story of Markandeya. And so one year, so the convocation drama, again, the reason I like to mention these stories is, these things are, Swami doesn't design it just like that. I think these things bring important messages, not only the people who are watching it, but also for the people who are acting. So this particular time, I had gone home for vacation during Deepavali time frame, and what had happened was, as soon as I reached, typically even vacation time, a lot of the students end up staying back because if some people go home, lesser people are there, more access to Swami. So, but then Swami will say, no, you guys have to go home, your parents will say, I am pulling you away from them, you need to go and spend time with them, he used to say. And then most parents will say, we'll come to Puttaparthi as well. So, all of us can be there together. So, anyway, this particular time I had decided to go home for a few days, and I had gone home for Deepavali, like as many of you know, in traditional South Indian families, Deepavali is like a big festival. You get a lot of new clothes and all the different goodies which you get to eat. And per se, growing up in India, you also have this fireworks which you can freely do in some states but not in others. Anyway, so in India you can do that. So I think we enjoyed that piece very, very much. So I had gone home and to spend Deepavali, and then as soon as I landed at home, the next day actually the warden calls and says, Swami wants you to come back. There's a convocation place, so he wants you to be part of that. I was like, I only was there for a day. I was telling my mom, one more day and then I'll go back tomorrow, right? So you get some home food and you can eat. The reason I mention this is it's so critical who we have around us. If my mother had said, oh, you've come after a long time, stay 2 more days and then go, the value for Swami's word will come down right away. It's important that the people around us supplement or reinforce Swami's message. Swami should be that priority for all of us. And I think that is the only way, we can all together, even though our journey is personal, we can all together reach him, So anyway, my mother said, you need to leave right away. So next day morning I took a bus, went back to Puttaparthi. As soon as I landed in Puttaparthi, I was fortunate, Swami right away said, come call me. I went in and then he said, actually till that point I didn't know for what. I only knew that I had to go. So I came back and then as soon as got in the interview room, Swami told me, this year for convocation we are going to have 2 plays. So the institute students were already doing a play in English. So he said, we're going to have a Telugu play and it's going to be on Markandeya and I want you to play Markandeya's mother's role. Now the difficulty is we all live in Puttaparthi, but we're not that conversant in Telugu to, if it's a main character, you have a lot of dialogues. And I was like, I don't think I'll be able to say all these Telugu dialogues. It's very tough. And most of the other people in the play were Telugu people. And except Shantanu, who played the role of Markandeya, and he is a Hindi boy. I was like, it's even worse for him. Right? So it's okay for me, but Swami used to, in some ways when I look back, he used to, for some of these title characters, like Dr. S. Kumar has played many of these roles, Swami expected them to sing a lot of songs, and it's not really, we are not really picked for our acting per se, it is more for the music and other things, typically he likes the music boys to be in all these titular roles. Like you would have seen Ravi Kumar was here a few years ago, he played the Chaitanya's role. Like there are plenty of songs which come into that play. So, Swami said, so you have to play the mother's role and in front of Swami you just say yes, you don't argue, you don't, it'll just get worse from there. So I said, I just shook my head, but he looked and he knew there was some discomfort. So immediately he said, don't worry, I'll come and tie the sari for you. So these are ways in, he makes life simple and he was very particular that I wear the sari like Anjali Devi wore the sari in Sati Sakubai movie. Right, because it's a Maharashtrian style, so he said, no, I'll come and help you with that. So anyway, so we prepared for the play, and I'll show you some scenes from that. So it's Hillview Stadium. Swami is one of the major birthdays. That's where I used to be in the Hillview Stadium. And 1991, I think that's the year the Super Specialty Hospital, Swami had just made the announcement next day, right? I think at the birthday. So the play was going on and Dr. Shankar Dayal Sharma was the President of India. He was the chief guest for that particular play that day. So he was sitting with Swami in Shanti Vedika and the first act was going on. This is just some acts from the play. And before I go there, I should say, Swami had finished his discourse, convocation day, right? So he had given his discourse. Immediately he came backstage as Swami's word is his word. Next, he came back to the stage and he said he helped me tie the sari and everything. And then he said, your husband is a sannyasi, you can wear jewels. So when I look at it, it's a little awkward that, where everybody is a sannyasi on the left side and we have plenty of jewels going on the ladies side. So he was like, oh, you guys are okay, you guys should wear. But obviously we don't mix, right? So a lot of the men play the ladies' roles as well. That is the reason. Beyond a certain age, Swami never wanted men and women to be mixed in the same play. So which we do in our SSC sessions as well. Over a certain age, we don't mix them in the same group. Anyway, so this first scene started and it was going on and suddenly, right after that scene ended, I suddenly noticed that the warden comes up to me and says, Swami is saying from where he was sitting, Swami was sitting in the Shanti Vedika, he can see your trousers from below the sari, right? And he wants you to fix that, right? So this is Swami's eye, that's what I want to say. Swami's sitting with Dr. Shankar Daya Sharma, I'm sure discussing a lot of things about the country, but at the same time, his eye is on that minutest detail. Again, an example for us when we set up our events, we set up our centers, we set up our daily life. I think to look out and watch out for those minutest details. Swami was, his own self, his own form and, his own clothes and his own hair. Swami was so particular that he fixed everything before he showed outside. He used to shave twice a day, right? So just so that he's like, people look at me as this guru, people look at me as God, and if I cannot symbolify or perfection, I should put some effort into that. So he was so particular in how he looked and how he dressed. Again, a good example for us that, in the end, we dress for ourselves and hope maybe others see us as well, but at the same time, when we come to a certain event, certain place, I think there is an expectation how we look. So, and Swami was a prime example for something like that. Anyway, so this scenes from the play. So lovely times, I think, spent in his presence, and many days Swami used to pull our leg after that. Particularly, he used to, I know Dr. Eskumar always shares, particularly when men play the ladies' role, he will make sure that nobody's pulling your leg in the hostel, right? Other boys will say, oh, you're playing a lady's role and things like that. But at the same time, Swami used to always make sure you're comfortable with that. Yeah. In the end, we always do it because Swami asks us to do it. There's no question. But at the same time, he seeks out and reaches out and makes sure we are comfortable as well. So I wanted to just share a few more quick pictures here. I'll just read one quote of Swami. Only by the light of the divine lamp inside can you blossom as a worthwhile person. Inner purity is the greatest wealth that one can acquire. Inner purity is the wick in the container of the heart. Devotion is the oil and divine grace is the fire with which the lamp of wisdom can be lit. The prime requisite for achieving divine grace is to have harmony in thought, word, and deed. And again, the reason I keep bringing this up is, spending life in his presence, very often we can get deluded, by simple things which Swami discusses with you, very often forgetting this, he's this, magnificent master who has, so much to give. A couple of quick pictures I'll just show you. This is Janmashtami in 1992. Actually, that's the day Swami gave me permission to sing in the mandir. So this is, again, I'm sure you've heard from different people. So bhajan singing is a very big privilege, right, in Prasanthi Nilayam particularly. But I particularly want to say now that I am in the officer role as well, in centers and other places, we should also deem it as an extreme privilege for service. So, a good bhajan can elevate the entire audience. A bhajan not sung well can also bring everybody's energy down. So it is important to keep that in mind when we render a bhajan. That's why it's important to pick something which is suitable for each of our voices. So, in Parthi, it is important that Swami gives you permission to sing, and it is very interesting those days, particularly. There used to be a lot of people who are interested in singing, but you have to qualify yourself as well. Swami used to make sure you have enough music training, you put effort, and this is very often, we are always feeling ready to lead. But bhajan singing is also following too. So it's never bhajan lead singing, it's bhajan singing. So very often we forget that. We always, think of the mic more than anything else. And it's true, when we learn through the different process, I'll share a little bit about bhajan singing a little later, but just wanted to say, so that day, just before I spoke or right after I spoke, I had asked Swami for permission to sing. I have another funny anecdote actually. So there used to be a student who always wanted to sing in mandir, and singing in mandir is obviously a privilege, and like I said, Swami had to personally permit you to sing. So people used to get up and ask, and very often he'll say, this particular boy used to get up and ask, and Swami used to say, go and ask the bhajan group, they can permit you, and they know that, that is not possible. So he'll go and ask the bhajan group people, they'll say, no, Swami has to say, only then you can sing. He'll go back to Swami. So this will go back and forth for a little bit. And then eventually one day, Swami called this boy inside. And then he said, he made him sit next to him on his this thing, and he said, do you want to sing for Swami or do you want to sing for the crowd? It's a very straight question. Do you want to sing in the mandir just because everybody will see you as a mandir bhajan lead singer, or do you want to sing for God? And I think that is a question very relevant to each of us, wherever we are. And immediately Swami said, if you want to sing for me, it's you and me, we are sitting. You can sing for me right now, I will listen to you. Right? Or every day in your bhajan hall or in your puja, you sing for me, I will listen to you. But if you're going to sing before everybody, that is what I'm saying no to. Or not saying anything. Swami will never say no. Or he's not saying yes to it yet. The point Swami was trying to make is very often we confuse the two. Right? We think we want to sing for Swami, but actually we are looking to sing in the mic. Right? So it is important that we differentiate these two things. Anyway, let's show you a few more quick pictures here. That is V.K. Narasimhan, for some of you may know. He used to be the Indian Express editor for many years, and subsequently the Sanatana Sarthi editor. This is an exhibition which was happening in the school, and Swami will take great pride in introducing you to everybody. This is Srikanth, this, that. He'll add a lot of accolades. Anyway, just some few quick pictures from times there. This is our 12th class interview, and this is like almost 80 of us inside that small interview room. It's extremely tiny, and 30 people can probably sit very comfortably. It's like 70, 80 of us inside that interview room. Actually, Swami had materialized a diamond, so he was showing it to us. But just wanted everybody to just get a sense of how the interview room is and how really personal, the audience with Swami is. All right, I'll mention a few things about time in Vrindavan. I think, so once I finished my 12th grade, typically people, school students who go through school there, they invariably get the opportunity to go to Vrindavan. And Vrindavan is truly Vrindavan, actually. Vrindavan is a place I think a few of our students here have studied as well. And it is truly Vrindavan. Why I say that is in Puttaparthi it's very official. Swami is also this central trust member. He's also orchestrating the university, the hospital, so many things going on. Many official things. Right? In Vrindavan, it's so simple. It's Swami has always said, Prashanti Nilayam is my office, Vrindavan is my home, and Kodaikanal obviously is his playground. Right? That's where he spends a lot of time. There's so much fun, just being in his. Thinking of Kodaikanal, actually, I'll quickly mention one quick anecdote. This was at a time when Swami used to take the MBA boys pretty regularly to Kodaikanal, and this is more a personal instance, but I just wanted to give you a sense of how much Swami really valued being a Sai student. I had gone with my parents, and I had not taken whites because I was not really sure of the protocol. This was 1990 or something. And I was not sure about protocol in Kodaikanal where students get to sit separately and all that. So I had sat with the devotees way back in the hall, somewhere in the middle, and I was sitting with my father. And we were in Kodaikanal only for 2 days, so I was like sure that I didn't need whites, just 2 darshans, I can sit at the back. And Swami in Sai Shruti hall that day, actually suddenly he got up and he came all the way to me, and then he asked me, when did you come? And it makes you feel so important amidst all this thing. And I said, Swami, he came today and I'm leaving tomorrow. And so Swami just inquired about all that, and then he went and sat. And next day I felt a little bit more gutsy because I was like, Swami spoke to me, maybe I should go and sit in the front even though I'm in colors. Right? So next day I went and sat up front, and I sat there. And Swami happened to go through the devotees, so he went up to my father who was sitting in the devotees. And then Swami said something very interesting. He said, Srikanth, this is again, not something I have written to him or told him. He said, he has not brought white clothes. So he was not sure whether he wants to sit there or not, but students always have the right, he said. No, right is one thing, there is more responsibility as well to go with it. So it's just things the reason I mentioned that is it's something with even a thought in your head and Swami figures out a way to, and my father always says, Swami always talks to me and he refers to Srikanth's father, right? Very often, it will happen to every parent eventually. So it was a very nice blessing where it was a thought in my head, but Swami made it a virtual description of that. Doing okay on time? Yeah. Alright, so coming to Vrindavan. So Vrindavan is truly a special place, and we used to spend a lot of time with Swami. Particularly in 1993 is when I went to Vrindavan, and entire 93 and 94 was when the Sai Kulwant Hall was getting built in Puttaparthi. Swami spent almost 8-9 months in Vrindavan. So it was such a beautiful time, because every day there used to be this Trai session. Actually, I have a couple of pictures here. So Trai Vrindavan, that's inside Trai Vrindavan. And Swami will, talk to every student. Everybody gets an opportunity to be close to him. He will invariably make some speakers speak, and make you speak and things like that. So in that, I kind of wanted to actually share one particular story, which again, just to show Swami's omnipresence. So one particular devotee, actually my classmate who was in Vrindavan at that time, used to also sing bhajans. His mother had actually sent a robe for Swami. People used to send robes for Swami so that he could wear them. And she had sent a robe, I think, like months ago, and she used to always wonder, Swami never, I don't know if Swami got it, Swami didn't get it, Swami's wearing it or not wearing it. And Vrindavan is the place. The reason I mentioned that is, it was a yellow robe, and on one particular occasion, it was, I think, Janmashtami or something. Swami wore that particular robe, and his mother happened to be visiting and sitting somewhere. Swami goes up to her and said, he's never spoken to her. He said, this is the robe you sent me last year, I'm wearing it today. So, that kind of a personal God he is, no matter, very often we think, oh, somebody's special because they are sitting somewhere in the veranda or sitting up, down, or, in the student group or something like that. But Swami is this personal God. He will figure out a way to come and give you the answer that you have in mind. Might be a good time to talk about bhajans. Bhajan singing was something very, very special. And particularly if you're in the bhajan group, we had the opportunity to really not only sit in front of Swami, but also the opportunity to have audience with him pretty regularly. And Vrindavan at that time, it happened to be that only 3 of us were leading bhajans. And so what had happened was Swami used to sit for 1 hour bhajans. So pretty much we used to get like 4, 5, 6 songs per bhajan session. And sometimes when opportunity is laid so freely, I think the value sometimes comes down right away. So one particular day, V.K. Narasimhan, who I showed you a picture of, he made a comment to Swami. Swami invariably to pull somebody's leg, he will start that way. Say, Narasimhan, how was the bhajans today? So he said, oh, Swami, bhajans were wonderful. And then Narasimhan said, then Swami said, what about what type of bhajans were they singing? I seem to notice that they are singing, a lot of Sai, 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 Sai. In every bhajan there is a Sai coming. So then immediately he said, there may be Ishta Devata for, Sai has not come to establish any new religion. I am only setting you right on your spiritual path. If you're a Hindu, be a better Hindu. If you're a Christian, be a better Christian. If you're a Muslim, be a better Muslim. That's Swami's job. Swami's not come to establish a cult, not come to establish a religion. That's not his role at all. His role is to show you the path of love, to be a better person, be kind. It's more life lessons than a religion. So then Swami said, oh, these boys are singing, all sorts of Sai. They should pick songs which have Eshu, Allah, Jesus, so all the different gods' names, so that everybody doesn't get to lead. Somebody who's in the audience, they will get to hear their own chosen God's name. It will make their day. So the point I'm trying to make is, as lead singers, it's important to pick what we're comfortable with, but also what is important for the congregation. I think that's very critical. It's not like, I heard this bhajan on the CD, it's wonderful, I sang over the CD, it sounded great, I'll come and release it in the center. That's not the way, we should do bhajans. I think it's important to think where we are singing in the order. The devotional coordinator obviously does their job of telling you which particular bhajan you're singing, where it is ordered. Ask the question, what are the songs are there, how many different speeds are there. Don't just come with the bhajan, this is the bhajan I want to sing. Right? You also have to see what else is out there in the bhajan session. So that was Swami's advice. Pick songs, which have different gods. What we did next day was, Swami said, too many Sai, 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 so we picked bhajans which don't have Sai. Right? There are plenty of bhajans which don't have Sai. So, in fact, this particular photo, that's the reason I wanted to tell you. So, what happened was, I sang a couple of bhajans. One of the bhajans I sang was, Jaya Jaya Rama. If you look at the bhajan, the whole bhajan has only Rama's name throughout. The last line is Prema Sagara Sai Rama. That's the only place it comes. So I changed that line. So it's Prema Sagara Shri Raghurama. That's what I sang. And Swami sits in the chair and he keeps beat, right? So that's the way bhajans are always run. Everybody tunes to the master's beat in a very literal sense. If the bhajan singer decides to sing whatever they want, how many other times they want, if Swami's hand has stopped, the harmonium and tabla will surely stop. Then we'll be singing alone. The point I'm trying to make is everybody sings to his tune. It is not what I feel like, what I wish. That is not the point. So Swami was keeping beat. He allowed me to luckily sing the second speed. But even before I sang the last line, I think Swami's hand had already stopped. So it's surely not going for the second time. One time and done. But more than that, I was a little perturbed by Swami's reaction. So there was a twinge in his face, and I knew it was not good. So what I did was I went into the bhajan hall. I mean, right after we had a Trai session, I sat right at the back. So just so that I wanted to avoid any trouble. Because I knew that look on Swami's face, I was like, maybe something will go wrong. So anyway, so as soon as Swami sat in the Jula, Swami sits on the Jula in Trai, and then he's like, oh, where is Srikanth, he said. So I was sitting way at the back, and I just looked. Then he said, come forward. So I went right in the front. Then he said, what bhajan did you sing today? So then I said, Jaya Jaya Rama, and then he said, he asked me to sing. I sang the whole thing, and then I sang the way the original bhajan is. Right? So he said, no, stop. How did you sing outside? He asked me. So then I said Prema Sagar. So I said, all those people who came for you or for me? Right? So it is not that Swami really wants. The point I'm trying to make is moderation in whatever we do. Right? Very often in our lives, we take it from one extreme to the other extreme. We say, oh, I'm going to fast. I'm going to fast 6 days. It's just you're not even sure whether the body can take it. Right? Very often our principles of spirituality are either one extreme or the other extreme. I think what Swami has always wanted in life is moderation. Whatever we do, our secular life, spiritual life, I think moderation is most critical. Just skip through some of these. I think Trai is very beautiful. It's a lotus-like building, and every student gets an opportunity to, particularly that year and next year, Swami stayed so long, got so many opportunities to really be close to him. And in the interest of time, I will do a few things here, quickly show you. I was a very big sports fanatic. So it doesn't show, but I used to be a basketball player for many years. And I was also I was the sprint champion for many years at school, at college as well. So the point I'm trying to make is anything we did was Swami would give us the gold medal. Swami would give us the cup. So some of these pictures you'll see. This is the altar competition, which again, an excuse for us to be close to him. We used to make altars as every room. We were in the dormitory style. And the altars we make, Swami used to come and take pictures with us. So that was the main intention. This is the Kalyana Mandapam. That's sitting and interacting with Swami. Yeah, I talked about sports. Just quickly, one story here. I was a really mad sports fanatic, so I used to do all the sprints, long jump, triple jump. These were all my events, and actually received the Institute Champion trophy a few times. Anyway, so the point I'm trying to make is one time what had happened was I had missed bhajans for quite a few days, and because the sports meet was going on, and we have designated spots in front of Swami, and obviously I was missing from that spot. And on the last day, I think on the prize distribution day in the morning, we had a music program because it was also Shankaranti day. So I sang a song, and at the end of the song, at the end of the whole program, Swami was giving us Pad Namaskar, and he blessed me and said, song was good. He said, but where were you last few days? You've not come to bhajans. So immediately I said, Swami, didn't want to say I'm getting the cup from you. That's where I was. But I said, Swami, sports things were going on. And Swami immediately said, not everybody gets opportunity to lead bhajans. When you are given an opportunity, you need to be present. And that is a lesson I think about it even today. When we are given a responsibility, we can give a million reasons to do something else. But the point I think Swami was trying to make is when you are given that opportunity to lead, like I was saying earlier on, it's more a service, it's not us on the mic. When you're given that opportunity, you cannot go missing. That's the point Swami was making. So, anyway, so these just a few quick pictures here. And this is the alumni meet. I think you might have seen this picture in Samarpan. This is just a couple of years before Swami's leaving his body, and actually that was time actually. Even after so many years, I just think about it. He was asking me about my kids. He said, "How are they doing? How old are they?" And it's just it's so beautiful that connection. No matter it comes a full circle. So. So coming back to, let's take 10 minutes, yeah, okay. Coming back to organization, I think being very lucky and fortunate that could be part of the organization, and it's helped me learn in these different roles to do things where, furthers along, when you become an office bearer, it furthers along your journey faster than anything else, because it allows you opportunity to do plenty of different things. And I think Swami's name is guidelines is very clear. The organizations named after me are not to be used for publicizing my name or creating a new cult around my worship. They must try to spread interest in recitation of God's name, meditation, and other spiritual exercises that lead man Godward. They must demonstrate the joy derivable from devotional singing and remembering the Lord's name, the peace that one can draw from good company. They must render selfless service to the helpless, the sick, the distressed, the illiterate, and the needy. Their service should not be exhibitionistic. It must seek no reward, not even gratitude or thanks from the recipients. So if you look at it, these are the touchstones of, I know you must have had your officers training as well a few weeks ago. We did ours last week. And every time these become my touch points of why we come to Sai Center. It's so critical that we keep rethinking, because sometimes we get so engrossed in the programmatics. Oh, we need to organize this service, we need to do this budget setting, we need to set this schedule. It's always important to go back and say why we are here. The main objective of the Sathya Sai organization is to help humanity recognize its inherent divinity. That's the only reason why we come. There is no other reason. Everything else is an excuse, right? It is established to translate the principles of love and non-violence into daily practice. And if you look at the dates of some of these are all in the 60s and 70s when the organization was established. The qualification for membership is to be an eager aspirant for spiritual progress, to have full faith in the name that the organization bears, and to have one recognition as a good person. That is all the qualification needed. Nothing else counts. Right? So very often we don't have to think, I am this, I am that. It doesn't matter. As long as we can touch, this can be our touchstone. So just want to conclude with a few things here. So just want to say, in the end, all these experiences, and this is such a beautiful effort, Shravan, with the Samarpan, I think it is something I'm hoping will grow. It will come to our area as well. It is something which is really nice, because it's a beautiful way for us to think about him, think of his stories, to rejuvenate ourselves and live our lives. Center is weekend to weekend. We have to live our life during the week. So that is where we need our strength. We take all these good qualities, good values to our workplaces. Be true examples. In the end, that is what we are, right? So easy to practice value in the Sai Center. We can be good to each other. Everybody knows our value systems are the same. Practicing the same values, being the same person during the week at our work. I think that is where our challenge is. That is where our growth is. So the play is his, the role is his gift. The lines are written by him. He directs. He decides the dress and decoration, the gesture and the tone, the entrance and the exit. You have to act well to receive his approbation when the curtain falls. Earn by your efficiency and enthusiasm the right to play, and I was rethinking these words, higher and higher roles. It's not more important roles. It's higher and higher spiritual roles, right? It's very, very clear. That is the meaning and purpose of life. And so a mirror, though clean, may not reflect your image. if it is not having the mercury coating behind it. So also the heart may be pure, but there should be a coating of love behind it to facilitate the reflection of God. In this context, I will just conclude with two short stories. One is, there was a woman sitting for darshan, and I think she was trying to get Swami's attention. And every day she would try to reach out to Swami during darshan, but Swami would never look at her. And one fine day she was so frustrated, she got up and yelled at Swami. Said, "You were born amongst rocks, you were brought up amongst rocks, your heart is a big rock," she said. Right? Puttaparthi is such a terrain which is filled with rocks. And Swami smiled at her and said, I was thinking of this quote, that's why. And Swami smiled at her and said, "It's true, I was born amongst rocks and brought up amongst rocks, but my heart, to get my attention, my heart is like butter, essentially. To get attention, I just need the warmth of your love, right? You just need to give that love, and that will immediately, I'll come running to you." On the same note, there is this beautiful story, and I had shown you one of the exhibition pictures. I think one particular time a student had set up a burglar alarm, right, as part of the science exhibition. And again, anything we do in the science exhibition is we want Swami to come and participate in particularly if it's experiential learning, I think he can participate. And so there was this burglar alarm, and Swami comes up to his booth, and then Swami asks, "What should I do?" He says, "Swami, put your hand here," and basically you'll cut the light, and immediately the alarm would go off, which is how you would track a burglar at home. And Swami comes and puts his hand, and the alarm doesn't go off. So this guy immediately puts his own arm, and immediately the alarm goes off. And then he tells Swami to do it again. And Swami puts his hand again, and it doesn't go off. So this happens a few times, and he's really heartbroken because he wanted Swami to put his hand and it to go off. But then Swami immediately looks at him and smiles and says, "I'm not a real world burglar, right? I am a burglar of your hearts, right?" And that's where I want to end this talk, saying that he came, lived so many years. He stole our heart, and that's the reason we are here. And the only thing we can do to stand up for all that he did for us is and he never asked too much of us, right? He never said, do this service, do that thing. The only thing he expects us to take his message and, pick a few in their brilliant messages simplified in many, many small forms. He says, pick a few and it will only lead to salvation in our own lives. So with that, I want to thank Shravan and the team here for the opportunity to come and share a few thoughts. And best wishes for a good future with a lot of Samarpan. I think Bethesda has sort of taken the flag here and started this. Hopefully we'll be able to listen and spread Swami's glory more and more in the coming years. Sai Ram, thank you very much.
Om Shri Sai Ram. On behalf of the committee and the members of the Sathya Sai Center of South Bethesda, thank you, Srikanth, for coming out all the way from Boston to speak with us. Each of us connects with Bhagwan differently, but the one unifying source of joy is to listen to interactions that you've had with him on a one-to-one level. Thank you for bringing so many years of Prashantanilayam and Vrindavan to us. We've had a very insightful hour and a half. We hope you'll visit again and do this again, over and over again for us. May I request our senior member, Uncle Vishwanathan, to offer to you a memorial of your visit to Bethesda. We will end with closing prayers and our